So here's a wee riddle for you. What's normally 4 inches but expands to 7 inches with a bit of light fumbling and is guaranteed to get you all kinds of looks if you whip it out down the pub? Why, it's the Motorola Razr 60 Ultra, of course. My new favourite flippy type phone boasting stupidly powerful performance, upgraded battery life and mandatory AI shenanigans. I've had my SIM stuffed inside of this flexible kit for just over a week since the US launch. So here's my in-depth Motorola Razr 60 Ultra, or just Motorola Razr Ultra if you happen to live in the States, review. And for more on the latest and greatest tech, please do book subscribe and ding that notifications bell. Cheers! Now, fans of the Razr reboots will know exactly what to expect from this latest Ultra. It's yet another flip phone where the front end is practically all display. 4-inch panel pockmarked by those 2 external cameras. And that front screen is ably defended by fresh new Gorilla Glass ceramic. So while you don't have any kind of pre-installed screen protector on here, after plenty of rough handling, still no signs of damage, no nicks, scratches, scuffs or anything. And sadly, no, ceramic is not anti-reflective, unlike Gorilla Glass armour, but thankfully it is plenty bright enough so that visibility is not a problem, even on an incredibly sunshiny day. And you see there, quite happily copes even with the overbearing studio lights. It's actually been incredibly sunny here in Blighty this past week, so I've been out there a lot putting this thing through its paces after slapping the factor 1000 on my alabaster skin. And the Razr 60 Ultra boasts a reinforced titanium hinge. You've also got yourself a metal frame, and my review model boasts that lovely and rather unique wooden arse. And this just feels really pleasant in the hand, kind of like you're stroking a sycamore or fondling a fir. Not to mention the fact that it adds a slightly rough texture as well, just to aid the grip. It looks absolutely banging, and so far, again, just as durable as that front end. So overall, the Razr 60 Ultra has a rather premium vibe, but it's also reassuringly rugged, helped along by the IP48 water and dust resistance. A wee bit of extra peace of mind if you happen to be buggering about at the beach. And as usual, the Razr 60 Ultra not too chunky and absolutely zero hinge gap, which is the least you would expect in 2025. And yet, despite that gapless design, surprisingly easy to flip open one-handed. You don't need too much wrist dexterity, which I've got in spades anyway, believe me. And as for the fingerprint sensor, well, that's actually really bloody good, despite being built into the ludicrously skinny power button. Super responsive and rarely fails, certainly when you're clutching the smartphone like so. And also works fine when you've got the Razr unfurled, even if it is quite high up that edge in this case. However, that fingerprint sensor is also slightly awkward to use when the phone is sat on a desk. Now, thankfully, the face recognition tends to work pretty well when the phone is propped up like so. Let's try unlocking, and no, it's not recognised me this time, bloody thing. Come on, you know you want to. There we go. However, the old face unlock never seems to work ever when the phone is propped up like so in tent mode. So try it again. Yeah, no joy as usual. So I quickly learned when I did have the Razr 60 Ultra sat on a desk to have it flipped over like so rather than sat in tent mode, just to avoid constantly entering my pin or doing that whole awkward reach around. There's a hashtag for the ages, awkward reach around. And during the working day, the way I tend to use the Razr 60 Ultra is I have it sat on the desk next to me like so I can immediately see any notifications that pop through, and I can also jab the screen to skip tracks in Spotify, etc. And that front screen can do pretty much anything you need. You can add tons of different widgets to it. You can check out your messages and quickly reply to them. And that on-screen keyboard is just about big enough to avoid being frustrating, though good old autocorrect does a lot of heavy lifting. And you can also play a bunch of surprisingly decent Wii mini games, or even, yes, watch a wee bit of Netflix or YouTube or whatever. However, I certainly wouldn't recommend streaming a show or a movie on this dinky panel unless it's just some dumb comedy or something you're kind of half keeping an eye on. You certainly won't be able to appreciate those visuals unless you squint so hard that your temples start to throb. And trying to keep up with any action scenes is just likely to give you a migraine. But still, as one of the bigger flip phone cover screens out there, and with the ability to run basically any app you like on this thing, I found that as usual I could do most of what I needed to on this dinky cover without actually having to bother unfurling it. As in a sort of approximation, I'd say I probably opened up the Razr 60 Ultra about 20-ish times a day if there was a really long, complicated email I needed to properly read, or I wanted to play a game or enjoy a proper bit of Netflix. Still, if you do want to put your thumb through a bit of a workout and flip the Razr 60 Ultra open, that internal 6.7-inch POLED display is an absolute cracker as usual. You can absolutely still see that central crevice and feel it as well when you run your thumb or finger over it. But it's reasonably subtle these days, and it's effortless to actually see what's going on this massive screen outdoors, even when it's sunny, despite that super glossy screen protector. And those visuals are crispy thanks to the 1224p resolution, while the sausage-shaped aspect ratio means the screen is perfect for cinematic shenanigans, as well as a good bit of gaming on titles like Call of Duty, giving you a supremely wide point of view. You got 3 different color presets to choose between, with a bit of Pantone validation apparently. I certainly like the more vibrant offerings for my nerdy anime and general cartoon shenanigans. You've also got yourself a 165Hz refresh rate, full LTPO tech as well, so that refresh rate scales all the way down to preserve battery life when needed. My only real complaint is that a couple of times during these past 9 to 10 days, that internal screen seemed to suddenly give up on life and just absolutely failed to respond to my swipes and jabs, although thankfully this was easily rectified each time simply by locking and unlocking the phone, but I've got no idea what was going on there. And those stereo speakers are pretty beefy as well, and thankfully the earpiece speaker holds its own, so when you are watching video with the Razr 60 Ultra propped up on a table or a desk or whatever, the audio that is actually blasted at your face is still pretty loud and clear. And I have found that transitioning between the different states, folded, unfolded, propped open, etc. is natural and intuitive here on the Razr 60 Ultra. It's rarely frustrating, like 19 times out of 20 the phone will do what you expect it to do. The occasional weird bit of bulkiness, like if you start watching a film in Netflix on the internal screen, flip to the external screen, sometimes it'll skip back to a different point in the movie or something weird like that. That's pretty much it. And as usual, the Motorola Razr 60 Ultra sports a fairly stock Android vibe, with pretty much no crapware stuffed on here at all, just a couple of little bits like Facebook, that's pretty much it. Yes, love how it's still a lovely clean stock finish here. Although not loving the software support pledge of Motorola's quite as much. Sadly, the Razr 60 Ultra will only enjoy 3 guaranteed OS updates and 4 years of security patching on a bi-monthly basis. That's obviously not as good as what a lot of rivals like Google, Samsung, OnePlus, etc. offer with their more premium blowers. And still, the little bits and features that Motorola has added to the Razr 60 Ultra are worthy as always. You can quickly and easily personalize the phone. You've got some great gesture support, including, oh yeah baby, fast flashlight. And yes, this even works when the phone is folded up, although sometimes takes a couple of goes. There we go. And like many manufacturers in 2025, Motorola is getting itself balls deep in AI. You can quickly activate Moto AI in a couple of different ways, easiest way being holding down the dedicated key on the left edge. This combines a smartphone assistant with a number of key features, and it certainly has plenty of promise, but certainly in these early stages it can be a wee bit shonky. The smartphone assistant is absolutely fine, better than the likes of Siri for instance. Although that is kind of like saying being forced to sit through an entire series of Mrs. Brown's Boys is better than being forced to sit through 2 entire series of Mrs. Brown's Boys. And personally, I still just use Gemini. Motorola does also offer the option of gazing adoringly at your Razr 60 Ultra and just start speaking at it, and it should begin to listen and reply. However, this can be rather distracting because with the Razr 60 Ultra sat next to me, I have found that those borders tend to flash quite a lot, pretty much continuously while it's waiting for you to stare at it and talk at it. And this does tend to actually work reasonably well, so looking at the phone now, and there you go, as you can see it's now listening into everything I say, although frankly sometimes it sort of starts listening halfway through a sentence. And frankly, I don't like the idea of it possibly listening in when I'm not expecting it to, so I'd rather just use that button. Now, one of the Moto AI features with the greatest potential is called Catch Me Up. And what this does is it offers up brief summaries of everything that's been happening in your various message groups since the last time you checked your blower. Now, it's pretty handy if you happen to find yourself in lots of different groups and you just want to quickly catch up with everything that's been going on in just like 20-30 seconds. Just make sure you haven't missed anything important. Or at least it will be pretty handy when it's slightly less shonky. Doesn't always work as expected. Like for instance, this example, apparently Alex Moss is working on a new project, but when you look at the actual group, what he actually said was works for me when we're discussing meeting in a pub. But so far so good for the Remember This feature, which operates in the same sort of way as Google's screenshots or the Essentials space on the recent Nothing and CMF phones. Now, if your memory could use a little bit of help every now and then, like your uncle's spurts, because you might like a little bit of afternoon drinking every now and then, what you can do is you can get the Razr to remember stuff on your behalf, such as, train times if you just booked up some tickets. All you need to do is screenshot that information, and then later on you can ask Moto AI, what time is my train? And it'll tell you. So as I say, it's still early days, not everything works the way it should, but hopefully given a bit of time it'll all sort itself out, and it's still a hell of a lot less annoying, frustrating and generally bollocks compared with Apple Intelligence. And as for the brains of the Motorola Razr 60 Ultra, well, Moto has managed to stuff in Qualcomm's Snapdragon 8 Elite, and I figured this would probably be the stripped back 7-core version that Oppo used for the Find N5, but no, apparently it is the fully fledged 8-core major man-sausage version. And this is the first time, as far as I'm aware, that Qualcomm's chipset has been squeezed into something quite as compact as the Razr 60 Ultra, but it works really well. Which does make me wonder why Oppo went with a 7-core version for the Find N5. Gaming is as smooth as you like, even on absolute twats like Wuthering Waves with seemingly zero optimization. I played this game on the highest possible graphics settings, stuck it at 60 frames per second, and enjoyed a pleasingly smooth frame rate throughout. And of course, Motorola's chucked on its usual gamer mode so you can prevent pesky colleagues and family members from interrupting your session with their endless bleating. I did find that the Razr 60 Ultra got rather toasty along this top end when I had been gaming on the likes of Wuthering Waves for quite some time. Also when I was video chatting with some friends and family as well, it got very, very hot up here, so I'm guessing the chipset must be right at the top. Thankfully, it didn't get so hot that it actually shut down or started, closing down apps or anything like that. But yeah, I would have preferred it if it wasn't quite so singy. Now, one of the major weaknesses of the previous generation, the Motorola Razr 50 Ultra, was the less than stellar battery life. You had a 4,000 mAh capacity cell stuffed inside of that dinky foldable frame. And certainly I found that pretty much every single day I used that phone, by the end of the evening, I was seriously stuck into battery saver mode. And certainly if it's a particularly long, arduous day or you're out in the evenings, it can be a little bit worrying when you see it trickling down to the final 10%. Thankfully then, the Motorola 60 Ultra has been blessed with a far larger 4,700 mAh capacity battery. And boy, what a difference. My longest day with this thing, which was a proper full-on 18-hour cracker where I was out and about in London using the camera loads. Lots of screen on time, lots of video streaming, audio streaming when the phone was actually hibernating and everything. I still ended the day with 15% battery life remaining, and at a rough approximate guess, it's probably with around 7 to 8 hours of screen on time. And yes, that does include at least an hour of using that massive internal panel. The only time I had to plug it in before bedtime was literally when I was flying back from the States from Motorola's Razr launch, when I, didn't sleep for like 24 hours. And no worries there either, because the old 45 watt wired charging has been upgraded for the Razr 60 Ultra to 68 watt wired charging. So seriously, bung a cable in it for 10 minutes. If you've got a power pack or something like that on you, and you get a respectable bit of charge back in 10 minutes, 15 minutes. You do also have 30 watt wireless charging support on the Razr 60 Ultra, but this phone refused to play nicely with my wireless charging stand, I guess because it's a slightly weird, wonky shape. So even when it was folded, unfolded, just was not happy. And last up, the camera tech. And what you've got slapped here on the Razr 60 Ultra's front panel is a dual 50 megapixel setup, wide and ultra wide. And you've apparently got Pantone validated color capture here on the Razr 60 Ultra, but You've got a couple of different options when it comes to the colors. I stuck with the default natural mode, but you've also got an AI customized mode. This can learn what kind of tonal output you appreciate in different scenarios and then automatically apply a filter. Otherwise, you can also stick with Motorola's signature style. But as I say, I went with natural for my test shots. And using this, pictures do indeed have a more authentic vibe, certainly compared with those spaffed out by Apple, Samsung, etc. In strong contrast, those shaded areas aren't blown out. It's really unusual to see any kind of saturation at all. And even in rather soft lighting, the Razr 60 Ultra tends to capture colours with fairly impressive accuracy. Only occasionally were those tones noticeably warmer than what I saw in real life. However, you will get some blurry results with any exaggerated motion, especially when the lighting isn't ideal. Not great if you're shooting family, pets, or random pop stars apparently. And the Razr's ultra-wide shooter is decent enough when you want to cram loads of stuff into your pic, and the decent sized 50 meg sensor means it doesn't struggle as much as some ultra-wides in low light. And yes, you can zoom in a wee bit with that main shooter, but if you do crop in too much, everything will get proper fuzzy well before you hit the 30 times maximum. Now the